Hello, Bainbridge. I'm Stefan Goldby, President and CEO of the Bainbridge Island Chamber of Commerce. Ahead of this year's upcoming elections, welcome to this community conversation with one of the candidates for City Council. In the interests of fairness, we're asking all candidates the same 12 questions that knowledgeable chamber members helped us write. Though each candidate's answers may lead to individualized follow-ups or requests for clarification. Each candidate will have up to 45 minutes to answer all 12 candidates. Each candidate will have up to 45 minutes to answer all 12 questions, and none of the candidates have seen the questions in advance, and their answers will be presented in full. With that in mind, Mr. Candidate, would you care to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Stefan. My name is Dick Haugan, a longtime Bainbridge resident. And I ran for city council 10 years ago. That's what got my toe in the water with politics. I've been involved with several issues since. And this round, actually, my wife said, Dick, you spend so much time on this, why don't you run for city council? So I did, and here I am.
And she's in the background. You should say hello.
She's in the background.
Okay, so to begin, you started to do a little of it, but could you describe your experience working with different stakeholders in the community, businesses, organizations, residents alike?
Sure. I mean, it's really all over the map. I think what I bring to the table when I find an issue, and I have a couple of major ones, and I'm sure we'll probably get into that. I don't have all the answers. Like, nobody has all the answers. So my style and MO is to dig into things, find people who know what's going on. I did that with you, actually, when we first started the chamber. I didn't know you, and I knew you were essential to what was going on. Sat down, we talked a little bit, find out what's going on. Could be a resource, and we bounce things off each other a little bit. That's what I do. So depending on what's going on, that's it. Affordable housing, another one I suspect we'll get into, and when we get there, I can explain how I approach that problem, because when I started it, I think I was talking to Brenda about it. She said, Dick, affordable housing is a big issue. I didn't really know about it. So I got into it and figured it out.
So what personally makes you want to be a city council member for the next 4 years?
I think what is lacking, in large part, are good business decisions. And if you look at the current council, there's nobody on there really who's had what I would call a hardcore business experience. Handling a budget as big as Bainbridge Islands or bigger, I have. Handling and managing people, as many as the city has or more, I have. I was GM of a division of a Fortune 500 company, Pitney Bowes. And amongst other things I've done, I started an ad agency. I'm sort of an entrepreneur by nature, but I do have the business background. And when I see some of the decisions being made on emotion, not necessarily looking at the facts, definitely sometimes not on financial considerations, I look at that and said, somebody needs to do something. And I thought it was something that I could do and offer to the community. And to add to that, when you talk to other people, I found that I'm not alone, and it was a reasonable path to go down.
So you mentioned you've been talking to people in the community. What would you say the top 3 specific concerns you hear from Islanders right now?
Oh, boy. Well, in terms of volume, I would say affordable housing is up there, and again, I hope we get into that subject because there's a lot to say about it. And it's all over the map. Everything from speed limits to we've talked about tourism downtown, parking. Do we want tourism? Do we want to preserve the character of the island and leave it alone? As you know, I've conducted some surveys on my own outreach, looking at some of these issues and trying to get a feel for what people think other than me. And you'll hear this over and over from me, not just today. I think you've heard it before ad lib, that it's not just what I think and my friends think. It's what the whole population thinks. What's the whole population? The democratic process of listening to the people and figuring out what the majority wants. So listening, and then taking all that in, connecting the dots, get rid of the gobbledygook, prioritize what's going on, which I don't think the city does a good job. They could do it better. Let me say it that way, in terms of prioritization. And if we talk about the comp plan a bit, I can point out some specifics that might be helpful. Prioritize things, make some decisions, get it done, and keep your eyes on the piggy bank. As we have talked, there are many things going on with our local government. I think we should and could be doing a lot better with the money.
So let's turn to the comp plan and the sub area plan. They kind of represent a generational opportunity to plot a path forward for the next 20 years on the island. What do you think are the top 3 things those documents must create for Bainbridge?
Well, again, here we go. What I think versus what the general population thinks. And what I think the general population thinks is they're not really sure of what's going on. I mean, we've got Core Winslow, we've got Linwood, we've got other areas that are up and coming and what to do with them. Linwood might be a good secondary example. There are people that live there and don't want more hotels and that sort of thing going in there. They want to preserve the local character. On the other hand, there are people who think it's a benefit to have all this stuff done. So it's one of the things I'm going to repeat. Were it up to me, I would go out of my way, either through surveys, like I've been doing on my own, to get an idea, or even if it's really a knotty issue and deciding whether it is or not, getting an island-wide 100% survey where people could chime in. Because in the surveys that I do, for example, it depends. Some people answer and some people don't. Is that representative of the democracy? Don't really know.
I'm sorry. Let me pause just for a second, because somebody just started doing carpentry outside my window. Hold on just one moment. I'll be right back.
All right.
Okay, there we go. And to our viewers, I apologize. Somebody started running a saw outside my office window. Welcome to downtown Winslow at times. So we had to pause for a moment where I politely asked them to refrain from that. Okay, yeah. Sorry. Back to you, Dick. I apologize.
I love the way you say saw. The British way. So if I had to pick one thing about the whole sub area that would be an issue to focus on, would be density. And I hear different things about density. I was talking to a past chair of the Planning Commission just yesterday on this issue. And some people say density is an issue, some people don't. I've heard people say it's all about density, high rises, low rises, middle rises, cottages, whatever. I think it's pretty much up in the air what density means. It means different things to different people. And so density in Core Winslow from the outside doesn't seem to be a big setback. Put up whatever you want, kind of, who cares? Density in Linwood as an alternative seems to be a different issue. So I don't know if that's the only thing to focus on, but like other things, okay, what is it we're trying to do? How are we trying to get there? I know that Inslee's got this deal about housing and 1,800 more units in 20 years. That affects density. How do you do it? Where do you do it? What do you do about parking? So I would think in terms of defining density would lead to other solutions.
So all of those will ultimately manifest in the city code. If you could change one thing in the Bainbridge Island city code, what would it be?
If I could change one thing in the city code, well, I don't have a one thing in the city code I would want to change. What I have said starting 10 years ago, the city code is there. Some of it goes through months or years of thinking and talking and all that sort of thing. The code is the code is the code. If you want to change the code, change the code. It does seem, again, from the outside that when somebody wants to do something different, they go apply for variation and that sort of thing, and say this code variance is okay. Let's do it. And it seems to be too many things. And you asked a question: what single thing? I don't have a single thing.
That's okay. Your answer is perfectly acceptable. They're just guidelines. Okay, so within the city's housing action plan, there seems to be an almost universal agreement that increasing housing diversity and supply on the island is sort of necessary for the sake of the community. Do you agree with that? And I guess what kinds of housing do you think are the most important and why?
A knotty issue. What I would say initially about this subject, it's not defined who we're doing it for, how many do we need, who's going to control it, how much it's going to cost, who's going to manage it, and so on and so on. As a concept, okay, let me give you an analogy. Anybody in favor of protecting the environment, raise their hand. I'm for it. Anybody for affordable housing, raise their hand. Right. As a subject, as a concept, it's easy. When it comes down to actually defining what it is and who you're doing it for, it's something else. And cut me off if I'm rattling on too long, but I try to dive in this with the HRB. And I think you and I talked about this once, that when I started this, I wasn't really sure what we had. So I sat down with Phaedra. We took a road trip together. I looked at every affordable housing unit Bainbridge HRB manages to get an idea of what we have. And I've done that. And it goes from some people, some of them are really kind of cool with views and all that. Some of them are dumps. And so what do we need it for? And I tried to, in that conversation, say, look, I hear the 30% of blah, 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 blah is what we're aiming for. I said, that really doesn't mean too much to me. If it doesn't mean too much to me, I don't think it means maybe a lot to other people either. So are we talking about teachers, firemen, McDonald's workers? What are we talking about? And because I've heard teachers, firemen, and that sort of thing. What the HRB said, no, not really teachers. They make too much money. Maybe early teachers. And that got me thinking about the definition stage of what is it that we're really talking about. And so if you pick on, or another one brought up that I could identify with is seniors. You know, seniors, fixed income, things are going up. They're living on Social Security, getting forced out of their house. They need to, I mean, that's compassionate. You can understand that sort of in a New York second. But then getting into the rest of it, I would say that whole concept needs to be specifically defined so anybody can look at it and understand what it is we're talking about, who it is, who's it's for, how much, who's going to control it, who's going to manage it, and that sort of thing. But is it, I think you said in there, do I think it's necessary? And the answer is, I think so, with a caveat. Not all people want to live on Bainbridge Island. The bartender at one of my favorite bars in Winslow, won't mention his name or the place, he lives in Manette, Bremerton. So why don't you live on the island? He said, I don't want to live on the island. So even if the income and all that supports that he would qualify, there's some people just don't want to do it. And sort of the assumption that everybody wants to live on Bainbridge Island, I don't think that's true either.
Okay, well, good job setting up the next question. With more and more of the island's workforce coming to work over the Agate Pass Bridge, how would you try to imagine transportation on Bainbridge? Car share, buses, ferries, bike lanes, or something else?
Well, this is outside the box, and I think it's been talked about before. I don't know. I mean, and I'm not sure where it all is. A lot of traffic comes over the bridge, congestion, two-lane bridge, and all that sort of business. I would sort of like to revisit it and see what the options are. If, for example, hypothetically, on the other side of the bridge where the casino is, or on the other side where it's no man's land under the power terminals, there's a nice big parking lot and frequent buses going back and forth to alleviate traffic. or it could be something that'd be good for the casino. That could be one interesting alternative. In terms of, are you asking now off-island people coming on the island and how to handle that transportation issue, or just
I
in
think
general?
once they're over the bridge, it doesn't really matter if you're a local or somebody coming from over the bridge. You're a car on the island right now.
Right. And so, what you're asking is how to handle all the traffic we have, or how to
But just
accommodate.
what do you think of that? What are the ways to make it better?
Well, one of the goofy ideas I had, have you ever heard of Elon Musk?
Yes.
Well, I called him fairly recently, and I didn't get through to him. I keep on trying, and said, "Look, how would you like to participate in a social experiment?" And I said, "What do you mean?" This is not. I haven't gotten to Elon yet, but maybe I will. And I said, "We have an island that's about the same size as Manhattan, but fewer people. And we have ferry access on one side, a bridge on the other, all sorts of transportation issues. The driverless cars and all that sort of thing. And on the island, we have a bus, a BI ride or Pingo or whatever it is. A whole entire bus will go to pick up 1 or 2 people. What would be wrong with exploring the idea of a fleet of, say, 50 self-driving Uber kind of cars that, housed somewhere in the middle of the island, totally automated? You call up and 1 or 2 people want to go from A to B, or maybe as far as Paulsville, I'm not sure, but something clever to get the transportation link going outside the box. Would it work? Might or might not. Do we have the technology to do it? I think we do. How about all our trees overhead? I don't know if it's a problem or not, but people smarter than me could look at this, and maybe they've done it someplace in the world, but I would think creative things like that should be tested.
Well, I would say someone that would pick up the phone would be Greg Dronkett at Pacific Mobility Group on the island, because he's very much thinking along those lines. So that'd be a good local conversation you could have along, maybe get that moving forwards more.
Would you text me his number?
Of course I would. Chamber is here to make connections, Dick.
Yeah.
I guess more specifically, would you support a new Bainbridge, Bremerton, or some variant thereof foot ferry to give a different way to connect the north and the south of Kitsap County?
Oh, you mean like the Bremerton fast ferry idea and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, along those lines, yeah.
I'm a boater, and in concept, I think it's one of these things that's worth exploring. The issue is once you get to the island, Bremerton's not an issue. They've got that whole metroplex downtown, a nice dock, not an issue. Bainbridge, it depends where you land. If you come around the Cape of Good Horn and go into Eagle Harbor, it would be one thing. But distance, you can practically swim from Bremerton to the south end of Bainbridge Island. And at one time, Fort Ward was there. Would it make any sense to do something down there? It might. I mean, my mother-in-law was in the first resident of Madrona House. There's a guy that worked there in the middle of the night, lived in Bremerton. He took the ferry to Seattle, then changed to Seattle and took the ferry to Bainbridge Island. He didn't have a car and got to work. So how many people are like that? I don't know. Is there a pool that would benefit for that? I don't know. Part of our labor problem on the island, could we draw from Bremerton for some people to do that? Perhaps. I think it's a clever idea. I think it was one of Leslie's things, and it would be fun to sit down and see if there were some alternatives. And again, maybe thinking outside the box, a way to make it better. But I'd sure think about it.
So another tricky balancing thing, and you sort of referred to it earlier. How do you think the needs of both Bainbridge's residents and visitors best be balanced?
Oh,
just an easy one.
Yeah. Do you want a precise answer for this?
Generalized thoughts are generally acceptable.
How do I say this gently? I think there's a huge difference between core Winslow and non-core Winslow about the tourism question, people floating around. I have heard people say, I'm tired of these damn tourists coming off the boat and da 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 da. And they just come here and the cruise people say, go to Bainbridge Island, it's a great place, there's a ferry ride and that sort of thing. And maybe I can answer this question. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting anything, but maybe it goes back to, you know, the number one guiding principle about preserving the nature, whatever that is, of Bainbridge Island. And again, I would say let's reach out to the population as a whole, but I suspect it would be skewed against businesses versus core Winslow businesses versus not. So where I live in the North End, it doesn't particularly bother me. Unless you have to, when the ferry comes in, you're trying to get a parking spot, of which there aren't any. And it's a difficult, it's not a straightforward issue. There are definitely two camps on this one.
Can you explain your understanding of the role a city council member has in promoting economic development?
Well, I come back to my triad. First is to listen. If somebody comes forward, maybe the hotel didn't make it or something like that's an issue, that you know, what does the code say? What do we have in place? What are we trying to do? Who's it going to benefit? We don't just want it benefiting the architect of the builder. You know, what's the social value to all this? How does it fit our scheme? And you know, make that evaluation. And again, here's one. It's not just me. I might have an opinion. I'm not saying this is my opinion, but my opinion might be no more of this, period. No, status quo, or it might be a little bit. But what's important here is who the stakeholders are and listening to what they have to say, get it on the table. And I'm not talking about a work session or a work group, because those things can be very skewed depending on who's doing them and how it's being led and who's invited and who goes. And a lot of people don't go to public meetings, so you don't necessarily get the full deal. What I would want to do is figure out a way to get an honest, full spectrum of the stakeholders, put it on the table, and if it's obvious one way or the other, like it'd be an election, that would lead you down one path. If there's room to do something else, it would lead you down a different path. But yeah, so listen first.
Well, certainly along those same lines, I hope. But what role do you think the Chamber can play in the community to best help Bainbridge?
This is not a patronizing thought. I think the Chamber is doing a superb job of putting people together, making information available, being sort of a focal point to you know, connect people, I guess you'd say. And so is your question, how can the Chamber do a better job, or how?
Yeah.
I think you're doing a terrific job. I don't have, I think you're doing a terrific job. I don't have a single piece of criticism. I have, you know, a faint recollection of the past. I've been involved a couple of times over history, but yeah, I think do more of what you're doing.
Thank you. I'll quit while I'm ahead on that one. What strategies do you intend to use to promote civic engagement and boost citizen participation in our local government?
What staff? What say again?
Strategies.
Oh, strategies to get more people involved?
Basically, yeah.
Again, I think I've sort of said it with maybe the tourism thing or with density. Figure out a way to reach out more than the city is. Here's a very current example. Last week there was a planning commission meeting where they're talking about stuff. I wasn't here; I was out of town, but I look back on it, and I think 90 people showed up at this meeting with a comp plan review, and I think there's like 10 work groups established. I'm not sure how the work groups are established. I'm not sure who's running the work groups. I've got a note to Patty to if she could tell me, what these groups, how they were formed, who's doing it, and all that sort of thing. But the city has historically, and the shoreline plan is one of, put together these work groups, and they ostensibly represent what the people want. But if the work groups aren't balanced, if they're biased and all the rest of that stuff, it's not truly what the people want. It's a tricky business. I'm not saying I've got a perfect solution, but I am saying that very broad-based, statistically, an unbiased cross-section of people who chime in on what the subject at hand is.
All right, let's go on a quick flight of fancy. If you received $1 million grant to use for the city in any way, what would you do with it and why?
$1 million grant. I would look at the priorities, however defined, which I don't think they are well defined right now. I'd look at the priorities and then which of those required capital infusion. And this is a hypothetical. I don't know if I'm ready to stand up in the soapbox and say this, but we sort of touched on it, like transportation. How do we deal with this? It sort of bugs me that the VI ride and all that, you got a huge bus going to pick up one person. I would, and if we had money left over from Harrison, it's one of the things I've said, do something to invest in a test fleet of these self-driving cars, if that was a viable option, put it on the table and try it. It's a social experiment. You could do the same thing with affordable housing. One of the things that's going on now, the city has property that they could give somebody. They give it to HRB, which is the best business model we have on the island right now. There may be other alternatives. So if the property is free, then maybe something like infrastructure, $1 million. We can talk about Suzuki if you want to, but that is a hypothetical. Put in the infrastructure, streets, lights, and all that. And rather than start paying architects and designers and all that, there are some really, really nice manufactured homes on the market today for about 100 grand. And you could have a bunch of them up in 6 months. So where properties are controversial, as a social experiment, say, okay, we are going to do, let's see, $1 million, that's 10 homes. We are going to do a model 10 home affordable housing thing on property X and see how it goes. If that works, we're going to multiply it across various places on the island. So if I had to pick two for $1 million, I'd pick the affordable transportation thing as an experiment, and maybe the affordable housing or manufactured homes as an experiment. Or give it to the chamber.
Yeah, I think that would probably be slightly problematic, but I'm willing to talk about possibilities. Okay, back in the real world, where there's only limited time, money, and resources to tackle the challenges of Bainbridge, and given that you have been surveying and talking to people for a while in the community, can you name 3 specific actions you intend to take as a council member that you think would be the most important things in a 4-year term of office?
I'll start with money. One of the issues that I think is missing is oversight with money. Um, it's not that we don't have a nice balance sheet. It's not that we don't get awards for the way we're presenting our budgets and that sort of thing. But an oversight, the way we spend money and how we spend it, if it's accounted for properly, and if people know about it. I mean, way our government works today, every year is a new chapter. There's no kind of carryover or project management. If you do X, that it spans 3 different fiscal years. Nothing's ever tying that together. You don't really know what's going on. So keeping your eye on the money, and money flows into everything. So oversight. Another one that comes top of mind is an ombudsman. There's all sorts of things that happen, and you don't know where to go. And this may lead to number 3 as I think about it. We probably have all heard the frustration. You have some sort of issue, you go to City Hall. Who do you talk to? Well, I guess you talk to Blair. You could talk to whomever, but there's not necessarily a resolution, and nothing happens. An ombudsman could be helpful in that regard. At least people would know if they complained about something, that it would have ears and it get followed up on. Another one, I guess I could rattle off more than 3, but I know one of the issues that is raised over and over and over again is the permitting process on Bainbridge. And especially with you're talking about Core Winslow getting things done, and permits are terrible. But for the homeowner too, you go to the counter, you get 2 different answers on 2 different days from 3 different people, and it takes forever. Some years ago, maybe 5, the city hired an individual from Port Archer, and the idea was they're going to get the permitting process from the 12th of never down to like 5 days or something like that. And this guy came in, and they had a pretty good process in Port Archer. He's here for a few years and quit out of frustration. So there's a whole avenue in the planning department and what goes on there that I think from a citizen satisfaction point of view, again, I don't have all the answers, but let's talk about the planning department and customer satisfaction. Maybe do a survey, get a straw vote of what the top problems are, so they're not just guessing hearsay from 1 or 2 people. Put it on the table. Here's the top 3. Prioritize. Are these things real? And then how do we fix it and get it done? Slap it on there and report on it.
Well, thank you very much. That concludes our 12 questions. We appreciate the time and your honest answers. Do you have any words with which you would like to close this session?
Well, sure. The main reason, even though I've been involved with issues for the last 10 years, the main issue, the main catalyst for me getting involved with this, I just could not sit still for the waste on the Harrison police station business. After I got into it after the deal was done, like most people when it was going on, I did not pay more attention to it than anybody else. For multiple reasons, I got into it and started scratching my head. So it seems kind of expensive. I'm the guy that dug in on my own and figured out the finances behind it. That we overpaid. We paid $9 million for a $3 million building. Why the hell would anybody want to resurrect a hospital into a police station when there was an alternative? I found that alternatives weren't presented well. We could have gotten out of it. It involved undoing the deal. Could have kept what we had if we really wanted to, but getting money back and maybe even making a better decision. And it just irked me every day of my life that we could spend that much time, and bright, nice people in the city council, water under the bridge. I don't want to deal with it. Made the best decision I could at the time. I think you're lying, whatever it is. I said, this is wrong. I want to do something about it. my business. So my I think what I have in all this is my business sense, my business background, which I think is sorely missing. And I've said to people, so I'll say it to you, my strategy in this is to get myself elected, and over the next couple of years, finding people who don't really want to run for city council, a couple of more business people on board, and I think we'd make much better business decisions and have fun doing it and have a better Bainbridge government.
Good words to end on. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.